Hello, this video is on playing audio, the timeline playback settings, and the equalizer settings in MediaWorks, and brought to you by Nelson Systems Incorporated. I'll be using an Eventide Nextlog DX model recorder with software version 2024.1. I have calls selected in my search tab. From any records list, double left click on a recording to begin playback.
So when we'll put you without setting up.
That will load it into the player and begin playback. There are different options for your playback method. The default is single play, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Once a call is loaded into the player, you can use the player controls at the bottom of the window to play the recording back. You can adjust the volume with the volume slider. You can adjust the speed with the speed slider. You can left click on the percentages to reset those to 100%. And then during playback, the left arrow with the line will jump to the beginning of the recording if you click it once. During playback, if you click it twice, it will go up your list one entry and begin playing the previous record. And then of course you have the play, pause, and a center. And during playback, if you click the right arrow with the line, it will go down your list one entry and begin playing the next record. And then you have your loop playback option, which is the last button. If you click that, it will turn it on. I will select a longer record, so it's a little bit easier here for us to see. So now I have queued up this one for playback. We have the loop playback turned on. I'm going to adjust my play location and pause. And with the loop playback feature enabled, you have extra markers at the beginning and the ending of your audio segment in the timeline. You can left click on those and drag those in, and that will set a playback location for you. The playback will then loop between those 2 points over and over, allowing you to focus on that portion of the recording without having to pause and drag the cursor around. When you're finished with the loop playback, simply deselect the loop playback button and it'll remove those markers and play as normal.
We found him this morning. Is he breathing? I don't know. He's not waking up. And this is at 560 Walnut Street, correct? It is. How old is he? We found him this morning. Is he breathing?
So as you can see in here through my session, it will just sit and loop that portion for you. When finished, click it to disable it. The window in the lower right corner of the player control gives you the channel name and the current time of the recording. So as you're playing, the time will change to let you know what time of day it was. You can also pop the player control out from the bottom of the window by clicking the arrow in the top right corner, and then you'll have a player control that you can move around. To redock it, click the X, and it'll dock it back at the bottom of the window for you. Above the player controls, you have a slider that will allow you to navigate through the recording quickly. Move it to the location you want to play, and click play.
Okay.
And it'll jump to that spot for you. You can also left click on the blue arrow at the top of the timeline and drag your cursor around to a different spot in the recording. And when you let go, you can then play and begin playback at that location. If you'd like to play back multiple recordings at the same time, you can hold down the Control or Shift keys on your keyboard to select multiple recordings. I'm going to do that from my timeline. In the bottom, it's a little bit easier to see what was going on all at the same time. So I'm going to select this recording here at the top on the Baton Rouge PD. I'm going to hold down Control and left click the NCPD phone 2. Hold down Control and left click and select Dallas PD as well. From there I can right click either in the results list or on one of the recordings in the timeline, and I can start mixed playback. If I choose start sequential playback, it'll play them back one at a time, starting at the top of my list, playing them individually. If I do start mixed playback, it will start them playing back all in real time. So we'll select that.
How big? 230 pounds? Okay. I don't know if I can roll him over.
I'm going to try to get one in, see if they need
I don't want you to injure yourself, but if you can, or if you can find any way, if he's breathing for me, or body armor guard, if you want to, I can help you through.
So now, as you can hear, it's playing back all of the selected recordings at the same time. So it'd been like I was standing in dispatch at that moment and listening to everything. Sometimes with the mixed playback, it is hard to hear everything when it's jumbled through both speakers, so you can adjust your timeline playback settings. Each channel has the name in the resource name section, followed by a little arrow that will expand and give you a menu. You can adjust the volume for that channel. You can adjust the balance for that channel if you want it out the left speaker. Both speakers would be the center, and then to the right would be the right speaker. So that way, if you have multiple radios that you're listening to, you can move them around to different speakers. Or if you want your 911 call on one side and your radio is on the other side, you can do that. You can make one radio a little bit louder than the rest. So you can kind of mix and match how you want those channels to sound during that playback. So each one will have its own settings. You can also apply AGC, which is automatic gain control, to the channel. So if it is a phone call where one party is quiet and the other one's really loud, you can apply that so it'll normalize those audio levels. Also, if there's one radio, one person on that radio channel that's quiet and the rest are louder, you can use that as well. Obfuscate will distort the audio on that channel, so hopefully it'll still understand what's being said but mask the identity of the person. EQ will enable the equalizer for that channel. So here in a moment I'll show you how to adjust the equalizer settings. And then if you click options, that will open up a window and let you pick those settings from here. Once you have your timeline playback settings configured, the audio will follow those for playback and also for exporting. To export with your timeline playback settings, right-click on one of the selected recordings, choose Export, and go through the export as you normally would for the first step. Also for the second step. And then on the third step, you want to make sure you're selecting the Use Timeline Playback settings and apply redaction areas. So this will turn on or enable those timeline playback settings that you've configured to be applied to the exported audio. And then you would if you have audio annotations, you can choose to have those on or off. If you don't have any, it's not going to hurt to have that checked. And then you would go on and choose how you want to finish your export. For more information on the full export feature, see our video on exporting. Earlier in the training session, I mentioned that the default playback method was single recording. To change that, go to Playback menu, Playback Options, and then you can change that to whatever you would like. Continuous play will go through the list starting with the one you've clicked on or started to play and then play down the list for you. Mixed real time, when you double click a call to start playback, it'll start playing back everything on all channels from that point on. So again, it'll be like you were standing in dispatch. And then mixed resource, if you had a channel group selected, it would just play back all the channels within that resource group based on the one you clicked on first. Once you make your selection, click OK, and that'll apply the new playback method. Under the playback, can also skip inactive periods, so if you have recordings with a lot of silence in it, you can truncate some of that silence back during playback. And I also mentioned the equalizer settings earlier to be able to turn those on and off from your timeline playback settings. So if you select this, that just tells the system to use the equalizer settings for playback on that channel. To set the equalizer settings, you would go to Tools, EQ Settings, and then you can adjust your lows, mids, highs, and then decide if you'd like those settings to be always on or just as you need them in the timeline playback settings. And maybe you don't have the greatest speakers in your monitor or on a laptop and you want to remove some of the lows so it sounds better just during playback, you could do that. Once you make your settings, just close the window and make sure you have that set to be on. This concludes the video. Thank you for watching.